Hey, everybody, welcome to Crackpot, the podcast where each and every week we dive into a different conspiracy theory and we discuss the merits or the demerits of each. We're your hosts. I'm Tim.
And I'm Zach.
Welcome, Zach.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Loving the new setup.
I'm still just getting comfortable. We've done a couple of shows already.
Go over to YouTube. Check it out. I love this.
Absolutely.
Best idea I've ever had in my life is to
It actually probably has been the best decision ever because, I mean, you've had some real stinkers, but this is brilliant. Here we go.
Some of them are slightly more brilliant than the others. Okay, man, we're going back to our roots. We're going back to my roots, at least. I want to talk about some UFOs. I want to talk about some weird stuff in the sky, okay?
Uh-huh.
And I don't even know. Tom DeLonge, right?
Yes.
I'm shrugging for those of you who aren't watching at home. Tom DeLonge, huh? What?
I was a fan of his music.
Well, okay, this is good. Yeah,
yes.
This will be helpful. So, Blink 182. Tell me about Blink 182 because that completely passed me by.
Okay, because I got into them when the movie American Pie came out in theaters because their song Mutt was featured on it.
Okay.
And it was to me, just the perfect power punk, pop stuff, which this was I had just finished Green Day Dookie.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm vibing.
Yeah.
Living my best life. Ninth grade maybe?
That would have been ninth grade for you. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and then I got into Blink 182 and I got Enema of the State, which is a really good album. And then I went backwards and I got Dude Ranch and I got Buddha. Yeah. And I think they had one more after that was, they've had a couple since then, but I was that kind of ended my relationship with Blink 182. But I still, if I hear any of those songs, I'm like, the song's a jam. I love it.
Right?
It's that's just how that works.
Oh,
So.
to me, Blink 182 was in college. I had a roommate who would always just blast Blink 182 as we were pre-partying before going out on Friday or Saturday.
I cannot fault him for that.
No, I mean, it worked. It was fine. It wasn't what I jammed to on a regular day, but it was all right. To me, Blink 182 tastes like McGillicuddy shots.
Oh.
And MGD. So.
Sure. Ooh, okay.
Anyway, a lot of you are sitting there thinking, Tim, you said UFO and now you're talking about pop punk. I'm confused. Yes. So are we.
The whole, UFO community is confused.
Tom DeLonge, singer, songwriter, lead, I guess?
Yeah.
I think so. Him, Mark Hoppus, and the other guy.
Travis Barker.
There you go. Sure, man. They were one of the biggest bands back in the day. Yes. At least pop punk, I guess.
Yes. And by the way, real quick, they had a falling out with the drummer, but then he had a straight up near death experience, his helicopter crash or something like that.
Okay.
And then they all became friends again, straight up. So it's almost like threading the needle of all of these different topics, God. Right? Weird.
So,
anyways,
picture a punk guy doing punk guy stuff.
How old are you?
I don't know. How else do you describe him? Seriously, it's just like a musician, doing
tattoos and spiky hair,
a weird hat, and he's always on my lawn.
Yeah, dude.
He has done more in the last 5 years for UFO disclosure than anyone else.
It's so true.
And it makes no sense.
That is also true.
And I have been trying to figure this out for the longest time, literally since 2017. And then he has To the Stars Academy, and it's what is even going on? How can I take you seriously? And then he gets all this talent that comes with him, and it's by talent I mean actual real government people that have classified information.
Right.
And it's what world am I taking crazy pills? What is going on? How is this happening? So finally, Zach, if you are or were as confused as I was, a lot of tenses going on there. I think I can help you through.
Okay.
I'm not going to be able to answer all the questions because it's still very confusing.
Sure.
And it's about UFOs, so of course it's confusing. But I got a wonderful book, and I highly recommend this. It's called In Plain Sight by Ross Coulthard. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway,
Coulthard, yeah.
In plain sight, is really good. It is. He's an Australian author, and it's basically like a history of the modern UFO phenomenon and just what we know and what we don't know, and various players in there. And good old Mr. Tom DeLonge, Mr. Blink 182 himself, of course, has to be mentioned when you talk about this stuff now. So with that and with a little bit of outside research, I was able to kind of piece this together. But like I mentioned, Blink 182 was his band. He quit the band. I think the band still lives without him, but he quit somewhere around 2015.
Oh, okay.
Or he's on permanent hiatus, and I don't know what the difference is, to be very honest. But he's a charismatic guy. You hear him talk, you hear him do this various stuff, and he's a smart dude. And he knows what he's talking about, or at least it sounds that way a lot of the time. And just to go back a little bit to his music career, I mean, he started writing punk songs when he was a skateboarder, and then basically like a couple years later, they're selling out stadiums around the world.
Right.
So, I mean, to be honest, maybe like some of my resentment towards Tom DeLonge is just...
envy?
Yeah, big time. He's a rock star that then became like one of the most trusted names in UFOs. It's like, geez, how do I get both things I've ever wanted in my entire life, right?
It's funny that, when you went to the career fair in like 5th grade.
Yep.
Yeah, that was exactly your path.
I stopped at the Rockstar booth.
Yep.
I took the pamphlets. I went over to the UFO booth. I took the pamphlets. I majored in poli-sci and history, and here we are. So,
wow.
But yeah, I mean, to just kind of add to the fact that it's hard to take this guy seriously, he has albums like Enema of the State.
That's clever.
Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. Like, come on, dude, like this. That's kind of what it is. It's like, okay, but Zach, his whole life, he has been obsessed, fascinated with UFOs. And on the back of tour buses and in his spare time, he reads these books, he watches the YouTube videos, and he just kind of puts it all together. Mark Hoppus, one of the other guys in Blink, he openly, still to this day, makes fun of him for his UFO fascination. It's like, oh yeah, Tom, he thinks everything is a little green alien or whatever.
That reminds me of Slash, the guitarist for Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
He's an expert, not making this up, on dinosaurs.
Get out.
So similar to Tom DeLonge's UFO stuff, like Slash knows everything about dinosaurs because he said when he was on tour, as a way to kill time, he would just go to museums.
Yeah.
And he just like got really into dinosaurs.
He's like basically a paleontologist without the PhD.
That's exactly it.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
It's so just wonky what people get into. But yeah,
he's like a 6-year-old. It's also
yeah,
from Guns N' Roses. But okay, all of this together, and at this point, I can say with almost utmost certainty that he has been briefed by senior government officials who hold the United States' most closely held, classified, double top secret clearances, and he knows what the truth of the UAP or the UFO cover-up is, and he has gotten more access than probably anyone else on the planet.
That is so bizarre.
It's just bizarre, man. So I'm going to read this quote to you from him, and I got some various quotes throughout this, and it sounds kind of bonkers. It sounds kind of weird, but then you start piecing everything else together and lining up the facts and being like, yeah, this guy might actually know what he's talking about. And you start to wonder and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let me just read this quote. He says, the UFO phenomenon, the phenomenon has been around forever. All the ancient religions were written down based on witnessing this phenomenon in various forms. Governments of the world watched the phenomenon and tried to replicate the technology, but they did it in secret. So, in order to hide what the governments are building in secret. They blame it on spaceships and aliens that eat your brains and all this weird stuff, but it's all in an effort to hide what we're really building, something that is real but is exotic and esoteric, and it's all part of a plan.
Does this imply like military industrial complex?
100%.
Yeah, okay.
If you buy the Tom DeLonge UAP UFO theory and story, it's all about the military industrial complex. And what he's saying basically, and we'll get into it, is that the military knows full well, and they have known full well, and we have replicated a lot of the technology, but we're doing so in secret because, according to Tom DeLonge, it's a very real threat. And we need to get ready to fight the space aliens when they show up.
So this turns it on its head, this whole kind of discussion, because I had previously thought of this as, well, we need to out technology the Russians or the Chinese or whatever. And it's like, wait a second. No, it's actually to prepare for an epic galactic battle.
That's what he's saying. And look, man, for every person you find that believes Tom DeLonge, you'll find 10 that don't. He's very controversial in the UAP UFO world, but then again, every single person in the UFO UAP world is controversial amongst the other people in the UFO UAP world. It's like
true.
Whitley Strieber, Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan, John Mack, like all of them. It's like, yeah, I find it all fascinating. I will soak it all up like a sponge and digest it in my brain. But it's like each one of those people have 100 people that are like, they are full of it. They're lying. They're selling out. They're intentionally disseminating false information to steer people the wrong way, et cetera, et cetera. So take it all with a grain of salt. Let's unpack it as best we can.
Right.
So before he quit Blink-182, he was invited to MC an event for families at a top defense aerospace contractor, like I guess like a Christmas party or something like that. It's like, oh, let's get Tom from Blink. He can come in and people will like him and he'll do a good job and all that sort of stuff. But he did so under one condition, that he got 5 minutes alone with the executive to discuss an issue of his choosing. So Lockheed Martin has since confirmed that its Skunk Works division did meet with Tom DeLonge. Let me say that again. Lockheed Martin has since confirmed that its Skunk Works division has since met with the lead singer of Blink-182. Totally normal stuff.
Checks out.
Totally checks out. And the executive was Rob Weiss. He was the Lockheed executive vice president and general manager of Skunk Works. And the idea apparently was that Tom was pitching him an idea to do a documentary with their help. Like, hey, I can help with the soft disclosure stuff. I can help start to get some of this information out. You'll have full control over it. I just need your permission and your blessing and your access. Now, the documentary never happened, but it opened a lot of doors getting in there. Now, for those of you who don't know Skunk Works or have heard us kind of bandy it around or whatever, Skunk Works is the nickname for Lockheed Martin's advanced development programs and has a super secret black budget history. We are talking, they were the people that developed the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71 Blackbird, the F-117 Nighthawk stealth attack aircraft, the F-22 Raptor fighter, and the most recent F-35 Lightning stealth jet. These are the guys that build it and design it and everything else. And if you follow UFO lore, these are also the general contractors that either reverse engineer or try to replicate UFO craft, essentially. Still with me?
I'm still with you, unfortunately.
Okay, cool. Yes. So Tom says that he was invited back to a meeting in Area 51. He's like, I was there. I was taken into past 4 or 5 locked doors, into a room with no windows, behind more rooms with no windows, etc. And he asked them for help to make people aware of the UFO. And look, I'm just going to start saying UFO. I'm sick of saying UAP.
Sure.
So, to help make people aware of the UFO topic and to stop the disinformation. And he asked for advisors. He asked for help to do this. And he says that within 2 weeks of that meeting, he was introduced to senior top brass from across the military, United States Air Force generals, intelligence officials, high-ranking NASA bureaucrats, and senior officials at the White House, all to help him with this project.
So weird.
And again, it's just Tom's word, right?
Well,
okay,
continue.
So just hold on to that. Just hold it. And I'm going to fully admit that at this point. But yes.
Oh, okay.
At this point. So he was told to meet with someone. He had to fly, take 2 or 3 different flights to a small regional airport and then go to the diner, essentially like the little restaurant inside.
Sure.
And he sat down at the hangar restaurant, and a guy that Tom describes as, quote, the general, sits down next to him, and the first words out of his mouth were, "It was the Cold War, and we found a life form."
Ooh. Dude.
And he just kept talking.
Huh.
Yeah. So here is a list of all the things that Tom DeLonge has said. Not a list of all the things, but a highlight, if you will, some of the things that I found interesting. Tom says that aliens have been interacting with humans for millennia. Forever. They've always been here. This is not a new phenomenon.
Okay.
He says that the National Reconnaissance Office surveillance satellites, they saw UFOs coming and going through the atmosphere, and it was at such a frequency that they started mapping them and tracking them, and they were able to figure out an algorithm to predict when they would see them again go through the atmosphere, and they were actually successful doing that.
Oh, weird.
Tom says that since the 1940s, we've had a secret United States government UAP program that has developed our own craft and has figured out anti-gravity.
Whoa.
Tom DeLonge also says, this is a quote, "This intelligence is pinning different countries against each other based on religion, on purpose, and it's a very scary scenario."
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Here's another quote. Tom says, "The entire UFO phenomenon is about multiple gods that fight amongst themselves and by design factionalize mankind into different religions to step back and let us fight each other because it has other things it wants to accomplish. And we don't notice them because we're too involved with fighting each other. Our government knows that, and it knows that the others are instigating wars among mankind." So
that's so...
the aliens are playing the humans off against each other to do something else.
That's so weird.
It's so weird. In summary, he's basically saying that humanity has been kept in the dark forever by a bunch of religious zealots and now zealotous generals and military folks who don't want us to know that the gods we worship are aliens and might have malevolent rivals, and we are getting ready for a war with the aliens. The lead singer of a pop punk band who has albums like Enema of the State is telling us this stuff, and we're taking him seriously. Why, Zach? Why are we taking him seriously?
Well, I guess because knowing what I know about To the Stars Academy, I mean, he's getting legit people to help him, and they're not saying no.
Right.
That's what I'm going off of here. I mean, honestly, we kind of make fun of the name To the Stars Academy.
Oh,
we
we should.
Thank you.
And there's a halfway decent chance that Tom will listen to this. And Tom, I am on the record. That is an awful name.
Yeah, seriously.
To the Stars Academy is just...
The Stars Academy. No, Stars Academy. And honestly, his credibility comes from the fact that he's associated with people who seem to be fairly credible.
Right.
So that is disturbing, and it's troubling, and everything you just said sounds terrifying. Now, I would say, okay, if we've been interacting with these aliens for millennia, I mean, we're still around.
Right.
Like, how imminent?
What are they waiting for? They probably could have done this when we were figuring out the wheel, right?
That's
like, come
what
on,
I'm saying,
come on,
dude.
man.
So, how imminent is it really? There's not an answer to that, but I guess I'm taking a little comfort in that.
Right?
Maybe. I guess.
Hopefully, it's not next week. I don't know. Hopefully, it's not before this episode comes out, right?
Yeah, it'd be bad timing.
Or amazing timing. All part of the grand plan. Why do we think he might be telling the truth? Yes, the people he associates with, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But also, it goes back to a simpler time, Zach. July 27th, 2016. Here's a quote for you. See if you can place the person. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you'll probably be rewarded mightily by our press. So saith then presidential candidate Donald Trump. He asks Russia to find the missing emails on Hillary Clinton's server. The rest is history. We don't need to go into that. That's where it starts, Zach. And you're saying, why is that?
Yeah, why?
Because on or around that day, Russian hackers did start targeting 76 Clinton campaign email addresses, and they were successful hacking John Podesta's email.
Yeah, okay.
John Podesta, who we've also talked about from Pizzagate and everything else, which, again, we just have to put that on hold for a second. But John Podesta was a high-ranking person in the Hillary Clinton campaign. He worked as chief of staff for President Bill Clinton. He's was a super power lobbyist in Washington, D.C. Very well-connected guy. Very, very high up there. Very well respected, at least among those who circle in that crowd. But the Russians hacked his email, I think, by sending him a bogus Gmail thing that said your account has been hacked. Re-enter your email, and he did.
Yeah. Click here.
Click here, yeah. And he did. And then shortly thereafter, his entire emails got put up on WikiLeaks, where I think you can probably go read them to this day. I don't know. I haven't checked because I don't want to read through someone else's personal correspondence, but I'll read a book about it. The interesting thing about John Podesta is that he has forever been fascinated by UFOs and the UFO phenomenon.
He totally has, yeah.
Absolutely. Even when he was chief of staff for then President Bill Clinton, he spearheaded this kind of covert, like behind-the-scenes thing to start looking at, like, is Roswell real? What's actually happening at Area 51? Do we have crashes? Like, what's going on? And I think, everything came back like, stop asking questions. You're not privy to this stuff. You're just a bureaucrat who's going to be gone in 4 or 8 years, essentially, is the answer they got.
Okay.
But he has been on the record much more openly recently. But he wrote the foreword to Leslie Kean's UFO book.
He did. That's right. I was going to say, like, all this stuff is connected, man.
It's all connected. In the emails that were hacked, there was a string of emails between John Podesta and Tom DeLonge. And this was before either, like, Tom was not open about the UFO thing at the time. Tom was not trying to make a name for himself in the UAP UFO world at the time.
Sure.
He was just Tom DeLonge of Blink 182.
Right.
Like, literally, that was it. So there's a string of emails between the two of them where they talk about setting up a Google Hangout meeting between Tom DeLonge, 2 U.S. Air Force generals, and Rob Weiss, the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works chief executive. So it's actually true. It's actually true. And the emails show another meeting on January 24th, 2016 with the attendees, Tom DeLonge, John Podesta, Rob Weiss, a Hillary Clinton campaign assistant named Malia Fisher, a retired Major General Michael Carey, and Susan McCasland Wilkerson, who you probably don't know, but she's an astrophysicist, former astronaut candidate, and married to Major General William Neal McCasland, who is a commander of the United States Air Force's research laboratory at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Jeez. Tom DeLonge is sitting in meetings with these people. Now, we, in full disclosure, we don't know what they talked about.
Yeah, sure. Fair
they
enough.
could have talked about the football game last Sunday. Mm-hmm. They could have talked about what was happening on the campaign trail, right?
Right.
But we know John Podesta likes UFOs. We know Tom DeLonge is very interested in UFOs at this time. And there's probably not a lot of other reason unless they wanted to talk about the Blink-182 discography or the recent tour.
Zero chance. Zero chance.
Right? The astrophysicist wants to talk about Blink-182. I doubt it, right?
Right.
So draw your own conclusions, but it very clearly and very real, with a matter of fact, places Tom DeLonge literally in the room with these people. What's going on, man?
Seriously.
Like, what's happening?
Okay.
This is so weird. There's another email to John Podesta from Tom DeLonge somewhere in September of 2015 talking about a meeting with Tom and, quote, current commanding officers of the United States Air Force Space Command in Colorado Springs about the, quote, unquote, disclosure project. And again, none of this was ever meant to be made public. The only reason we know about it is because Trump asked the Russians to hack the emails and his own personal correspondence was made public. That's the only reason we know about this. This wasn't planted. This wasn't put there to make something look like it wasn't anything else.
Gosh, that is so annoying.
It gives so much credibility to him.
Yeah. It is such a roundabout way to get there, but it's so true. It's like, yeah, this wasn't planted. This wasn't intended. It just happened by political malfeasance, in essence, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Right? Okay. So let's talk about To the Stars Academy. Launched October 11th, 2017.
Okay. That recent. I was thinking it's a little bit older, but okay.
Yeah, I was too. But 2017, October 2017, somewhere out in Seattle, they had an official launch ceremony.
Literally.
Probably. Tom DeLonge, CEO of To the Stars. It's like hard for me to say with a straight face. Tom DeLonge is the CEO. Jim Semovin, who we've talked about before, he was a recently retired CIA Directorate of Operations for 25 years and Operations Officer in the United States and internationally. He was on the board. Dr. Hal Puthoff, who we've talked about, remote viewing and everything else. He's a theoretical physicist who also led the Psychic Spy and Remote Viewing program headed by our one and only Central Intelligence Agency. He's on the board. COO, Chief Operating Officer, Steve Justice, who 1 month prior to joining To the Stars Academy was a Director of Advanced Systems at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. Okay. Christopher Mellon, who was the Senate Intelligence Committee staffer and Senior Department of Defense role as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, which is a mouthful except to say that the guy was privy to some incredibly classified information all over the board. So each one of these people on the board, and there's more, of course, like Lou Elizondo and others, but each one of these people had compartmentalized top secret information.
Right.
Theoretically, and quite likely about UFOs and about the UFO phenomenon. And when I say compartmentalized, I mean that, quite literally what that means. Like they each might have known a slice or a sliver, and then you put them all in the same room, all under the same corporate umbrella. Mm-hmm. And they probably quite clearly got a much larger picture of the UFO, UAP phenomenon. What is going on?
Right.
What is this? I'm asking you, man. What's
I don't
going
know.
on?
I don't know. So I mean, so they're all looking at little different pieces of information, and by Tom DeLonge doing this, he's getting them all, around the same table to talk about what they all know to piece together the story.
I guess, right? Okay, so the mission of To the Stars Academy is as follows, quote, to be a vehicle for change by inspiring a newfound appreciation and understanding for the profound yet unresolved mysteries of the universe that can have a positive impact on humanity.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Just kind of seems like corporate mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
Like we're looking at weird stuff that might be able to help people, right?
That's fair enough. That's exactly right.
I mean, I think that might have been a better one, but hey, they didn't ask my opinion. 2 weeks after the launch of To the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge goes on fellow podcaster's show, Mr. Joe Rogan. Shout out to listener Joe. He goes on Joe Rogan's show and does a 100-minute interview with him. Did you listen to this?
I don't remember if it was that one or if it was when he was on Fresh Air with Terry Gross.
And in full disclosure, it probably wasn't 100 minutes. It was probably closer to like 75. And the first 25 minutes was Joe talking about mushroom drinks and elk jerky, I think. But nevertheless, he goes on and he does the Joe Rogan interview, and then shortly thereafter, he does a 4-hour interview with George Knapp. And
he did?
Yeah. So I've listened to the Joe Rogan interview, and it's interesting. It's interesting, and it's also frustrating because Joe tries to pin him down more than probably pretty much any other guest Joe's ever had on. And he's just like, okay, when you say X, what do you actually mean? Where do you get your information? How can I believe you? Because, look, Tom's saying some crazy stuff. And unfortunately, for the most part, Tom is like, I'm sorry, I know stuff that you don't know, and you're just going to have to take me at my word. And
so I have heard that interview because that was so frustrating, and I understood, both sides of it, right?
Completely.
But it left, the interview just being very, it just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things he did say on the Joe Rogan interview was that the U.S. This is a quote. He says, the U.S. already knows the secrets of free energy, or so-called zero-point energy. 1 inch of air could power the United States for hundreds of years.
Okay.
Which is true. If that's true, it's essentially a crime against humanity that we still are, burning,
fossil
fuels to move our metal cars around the planet and so on. But again, it's like, come on, Tom, like, how do you know this?
This gets into some of the stuff with like Dr. Stephen Greer too.
Yes.
So that's interesting.
Interestingly, speaking of controversial figures in the UFO world, he is probably number one on most people's list. Greer comes at this with the complete opposite take. He says that everyone's out to tell you that the aliens are bad and malevolent, and they're going to like take us over and kill us and eat our brains. The exact is true. They're kind and they're benevolent, and they want us to have this information, but it's the government that's hiding it from us. So it's like, I don't know. Pick your side of the coin, I guess.
Clearly, right. Okay.
So that was the Joe Rogan interview, and then the George Knapp interview. I have not heard, and to be perfectly honest, I don't have 4 hours to listen to. He said. Well, first of all, he said that after that interview, he was interrogated by people from the military that wanted to know how he knew certain things and to keep his mouth shut. And he was saying too much, even if he did have access to classified information. So apparently, if you can still find that interview, you can hear things they don't want you to know. But among some of those things that he did say, the U.S. government has UFOs in its possession. The United States government has recovered alien bodies. We are trying to master the technology. We need to master the technology due to an imminent threat. And he said that we would imminently be shown significant scientific breakthroughs that will seem like magic to people. And he said this about 5 years ago, so I'm not exactly sure what imminent means to Tom, but I haven't seen any super huge technological breakthroughs yet. But if this is all true, man, if this is all true, I mean, we've all been lied to by Congress and the government and the military forever.
Right.
And it's frightening, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. Did he give any sort of hints in terms of like what the roadmap is almost? So like I recognize he's not going to say what and where and when and how things will be disclosed, and he just used the term imminent, but like
I don't know. And that kind of goes to what To the Stars Academy is or might be, and that's a legitimate conspiracy theory. Like, what is their actual purpose, and what are they actually doing? And table that thought for a second. But no, I mean, in all actuality, no. But I mean, he says, look, not only do I believe that ET technology exists, I believe that we haven't. We've figured out how to play with it. Essentially.
Well, and that sounds just like what Bob Lazar said too.
Yeah. I mean, you start to thread this stuff, and it's like, I don't know, either they're all crazy or I'm crazy, or I don't know. Someone's crazy. Here's the interesting thing, man. To the Stars Academy is a public company.
Oh, okay.
It's not a lobbying group.
No, public. Okay, yep. Keep going.
And they are soliciting money, or were, while it was still operational, they were soliciting money from potential investors. And when you do that, you operate pursuant to strict United States government Securities and Exchange Commission laws and regulations.
Well, I was going to say that's a game changer then, because you actually have to conform to very specific guidelines.
You can't make unsubstantiated claims.
There we go. Yeah, baby.
So, if he's saying this stuff with that level of intelligence in both meanings of the words on his board, he kind of has to be able to back up what he's saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like okay, we just came out of the Holmes trial, right, for Theranos and all that stuff. So it's like, well,
yes, there's puffery, right?
Certainly. That's what I'm getting at.
Sure. But the 2019 offering circular says, quote, the company's aerospace division is dedicated to finding revolutionary breakthroughs in propulsion, energy, and communications. In July of 2020, Tom DeLonge tweeted, working on the first plans for TTSA Academy's first anti-gravitic experiment, more to come. Which literally, anti-gravity, like that is literally the holy grail of physics and aerospace, right? Working on it, more to come, obviously.
Deuces. See you later.
Right, nothing.
Tell us more, please.
Yeah, nothing yet. But here's a funny thing. Remember I said they launched in October of 2017. 2 months later, do you remember what happened? December?
Was that the TikTok stuff or TikTok?
Yeah,
Tic-Tac.
The Tic-Tac stuff. That's when that is when the New York Times released the big article. But just prior to them releasing the New York Times bombshell disclosure, whatever it was, black box UFOs and
UAP stuff,
something. To the Stars Academy posted 3 videos of UAPs in mid-December 2017. They posted the Nimitz, the Gimbal, and the Go Fast, timed specifically to have the most attention just before the New York Times article to gain maximum attention, because they were literally in communication with Leslie Kean, who wrote the article, and Blumenthal, who co-wrote the article, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
They sat down. She's like, yeah, the editor is giving a green light on this. We're just fact-checking a couple of stuff. And he's like, cool. We'll put out the videos. Go do your work, right? To the Stars Academy still exists, but a bunch of people left. So Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, Steve Justice, they all left. Hal Puthoff and a couple other people just kind of reorged and downsized and so on to remain on as an advisory capacity and so on and so forth. But my question to you about that is is To the Stars Academy like a government front? Like, are they, here, let me throw this at you. Are they intentionally misleading the public? Like, are they part of a larger disinformation campaign?
So I'm trying to think of how this would work. So basically, To the Stars Academy would be a government front just to make up a bunch of this stuff.
Yes. Yes.
And what the intent there is, at least just at a very minimum, to confuse people.
Yep, to confuse people, or like, let's say we did, through our own will and might, like develop anti-gravity and UAP technology. And we want to hide that from the Russians and the Chinese and everyone else. And we're like, let's just make them think it's from outer space, and we haven't figured it out yet. Right? I don't know. I'm just like, this is an idea. This is a conspiracy theory out there. Like,
yeah.
Even though you have all these people, even though you have all these facts that you can point to, like, they are very either intentionally misleading the public or being given information that they believe is true, knowing that those behind the scenes are, they will say this stuff and then mislead the public, even though they know that they don't know they're lying.
Would that, so just to make sure I've got this, would that suggest that like the Tic Tac UAP stuff is really just the government doing its ordinary testing?
Potentially, right.
And then the To the Stars Academy then was like a front to disseminate misinformation?
Sure. It's a possibility.
Okay. I mean, yeah, super technically, yeah, sure, fine, whatever.
I mean, when you start to go down these rabbit holes, like, no one believes anyone, and everyone thinks everyone else is either on their side or just working for the bad guys or something like that.
Right.
The other theory about To the Stars Academy is that it's a way for black budget groups like Skunk Works and Lockheed Martin to get anti-gravity and future technology to the public. Like basically a laundering scheme. Like they can't come out and say we did this, or we've been lying to you for 75 years. Yes, something crashed in the desert in New Mexico and we back engineered it and we figured it out. Like that would, if they said that directly, that would mean that they have very boldly been lying to us for 75 years and funneling incredible amounts of money to do this stuff. But if you just wash it through the To the Stars Academy, all of a sudden you have anti-gravity stuff coming out the other side.
I don't know that I follow that one exactly. What I would say is just that if one of these companies were to come out with, some sort of anti-gravity propulsion device, I wouldn't care whether it came from an alien or whether it was some super genius. Like, honestly, I'd be like, okay, this rules.
Right.
If it came from an alien, I guess I would be a little concerned.
Wow.
But at this point in time, if they told me a human figured it out, I'd be like, okay, cool, just get it out there so we can all, fly around.
Fly in our flying cars,
Yeah.
On 0-point energy. Mm-hmm. So one other thing, switching gears slightly here, one other thing that was, I don't want to say buried because we talked about it and it's crazy from that December 16th, 2017 New York Times article, but it doesn't get talked about as much as like the Go Fast and the Nimitz and all that other things. But here's a quote from that article. It is, under Mr. Bigelow's direction, the company modified buildings in Las Vegas for the storage of metal alloys and other materials that Mr. Elizondo and program contractors said had been recovered from unidentified aerial phenomenon. Researchers also studied people who said they had experienced physical effects from the encounters with the objects and examined them for any physiological changes. That was in there. And everyone else...
Disturbing.
It's so wild. Yeah. Man, it is so wild. But basically, we're talking about metamaterials. We're talking about the physical, tangible stuff, the nuts and bolts that these flying saucers are made out of. And it is saying that we have these in our possession. So there's a very famous in the UFO world, famous piece of metal that is or was in the possession of Linda Moulton Howe, who, again, very controversial figure, so on and so forth, who's not. But she said it was a metamaterial of extraterrestrial origin. And she said that this piece, and she did, she went and got it tested. And like, what is it? Is it, is it a Coke can, right?
Right.
Is it the back of a cell phone? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And they did the test of this thing, and it is micron-layered bismuth and magnesium zinc. It has the width of 1 to 4 microns. And I know, Zach, I know you know what a micron is, but for everyone else, a micron is a unit of measurement. It is 1/1000th of a millimeter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Think about that. Visualize that if you can. It is the width. It is smaller than a human blood cell. Okay, that is how large this thing is. And it is layered bismuth and magnesium zinc, which don't bond to each other. Those things don't go together. It is physically not possible to replicate. It has no commercial application, and it cannot occur in nature.
So it's been machined.
It has been machined.
Somewhere.
But it's been machined by a machine that we can't make. Mm-hmm. Because you can't make anything with those two elements that small.
Right.
It is impossible. Okay? All right. So there's that. In October of 2019, To the Stars Academy said that they were partnering with the United States Army to study and analyze this. And the agreement that the Army and To the Stars Academy came up with was that neither side would have to pay for it, essentially, and both would have access to the test results.
Okay.
So it's basically like, we'll run the test, everyone gets to see exactly what the test says, and then we'll both go our separate ways in the name of science. Furthermore, this agreement between To the Stars Academy and the Army stated that they were going to they're going to use this to develop advanced materials for the purpose of space-time metric engineering, active camouflage, quantum physics, and beamed energy propulsion. Now, space-time metric energy is basically a fancy way of saying warp drive.
I was going to say, it sounds
from Star Trek.
Yeah. Okay, that's crazy.
Quite literally what that is.
Uh-huh.
Beamed energy propulsion is the idea of launching spacecraft from Earth into outer space with lasers. Okay. Active camouflage, I assume, means like invisibility cloaks.
Invisibility, totally, man.
The results of the test, Zach, was that the structure and composition of these materials are not from any known existing military or commercial application. We are focusing on verifiable facts and working to develop independent scientific proof of the materials, properties, and attributes. So the U.S. Army is like, yeah, it can't be made. It's real. We don't know what it is. And also warp drive, launching rockets into outer space, I guess. Which kind of... I know this is odd, but like, why would Tom, who thinks that the U.S. military has been lying for 75 years, also partner with the U.S. military to look at something like this? Like, what's going on? Like, why would he share something with them that he also says they have?
That's where it gets a little dicey.
Right?
Yeah. No, I see
that doesn't exactly add up unless you subscribe to the theory that To the Stars Academy is actually a laundering front to get technology out into the public sphere, because the U.S. Army isn't going to one day be like, well, yep, we got crashed UFOs. There's super tiny micron thin things, and also we're studying invisibility cloaks and warp drive. But if you have To the Stars Academy be like, let's study this thing, and then they're able to say, yep, it's weird, and also we're working on warp drives and invisibility cloaks. I don't know what to make of any of it. It is so bizarre. The only thing I can say with certainty is that Tom DeLonge very much appears to know what he's talking about, very much appears to have access to highly classified information and people with and access to highly classified information. He's publicly saying he's doing these things in the name of and the pursuit of disclosure. And a lot of people, a lot of institutions are going right along with him.
So I guess kind of like where I come down on some of this stuff is when it comes to things like invisibility cloaks, when it comes to like warp drive, with or without To the Stars Academy, I just assumed that like these major defense contractors were trying to do that stuff anyways.
Right.
And so if they suddenly came up with this way to somehow teleport or something, I'd be like, yeah, it's probably been in the works for like 60 years, I would assume.
Well, yes, that's easy to say, and I don't know enough about this to say it well, except that like this is all very incredibly theoretical physics. Like this is on the outer reaches of what we understand physics might be able to do.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And
so for them to then make the next leap and be like, yeah, not only did we do it, we also figured it out and we harnessed it and we can replicate it.
Yeah.
And here's how you get in the little box and fly across the universe. It's like that. You can't just go from point A to point B. There's like 25 steps in between.
Understood, though I would still say I just assume all that stuff is going on behind the scenes, and I'm not going to see, B through Y. I'm just going to see A to Z as somebody who's just sitting here.
Yeah.
Now, as someone who hosts a conspiracy theory podcast, for me, where things do get weird is actually just around this like warring gods.
Dude, I know,
humans. Right? That's the part that I just like. I feel like all that could be true. Okay, let's just say that for the heck of it.
Sure.
It's like all these things can be true and still coexist together. I don't feel like they all need to be related, but perhaps they are, and I'm just missing the big picture here. I don't know.
To me, I don't buy that stuff. I don't believe that stuff. It's Tom admittedly, reads any UFO book out there. Mm-hmm. It's like he'll soak it all up. He'll digest it and he'll spit it back out. And to me, that seems like someone who read what's his name? Eric von Däniken.
Oh, Eric von Däniken, yeah.
Or Zacharias Sitchin or whatever it is, ancient gods sort of stuff.
Chariots of the gods, yeah.
Right. And it's like he got the fact that like UFOs have been visiting for a long time. He got that right, maybe, let's just say. He got the fact that like we have recovered bodies and crafts right, and we're trying to back engineer this stuff right. And he just kind of creates the rest of the mythos and ethos along with it. And it's like, who's going to be like, well, no, Tom, that's not actually the case. I view that to make an analogy that's not a perfect analogy. I think it would be like taking 7 different people to a room, right? One by one, and opening up the door and letting them look around and then closing the door. And then they all leave and they all try to explain what they saw and explain what it meant and explain, the placement of the things and the stuff on the wall and why the carpet was a certain way. They're all going to see the same thing and they're all going to be talking about the same room, but they're all going to draw their own conclusions. And they're all going to draw their own parallels, and they're all going to make their own story as to why things are the way they are. And to me, that whole, we have to do this because the aliens are coming and they're going to blow us out of the water if we don't back engineer this stuff right away, that could very easily been some general that sat him down in some room and be like, this is why we're doing it.
For sure.
Maybe the general made that story up. Maybe the general believes it, but like, who knows what? So I choose to believe parts of it and not other parts.
That's where I come down, though, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly it. I'm not going to restate that. That's what I come down with, which is I think some of this might be true. Also, you don't have to have all the weird alien stuff in there to make some of the other stuff true.
Yeah.
But it all certainly could be true and also could all be related. I'm just not quite there yet. So
yeah. I mean, honestly, look, since we started the podcast, Tom DeLonge has been this mystery, this enigma. I'm like, what is going on? What is happening? Who is this guy? Why does he have access? Finally, I think I at least have a grasp of it.
There you go.
Until he decides to come on the show. Tom, you know how to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Call the listener line.
Don't call the listener line. Shoot us an email. Send us a voice message. But anyway, that's Tom.
Love it.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride. If you are new to the show or if you're an old-time listener, we do also have a Patreon where you can go back and check out, I think, literally hundreds of other shows and content and other things we have there.
You know it.
Patreon.com/Crackpot Podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram and all the other places. We're there. Also, if you have a chance, rate, review, subscribe. Please leave a review. We'd love it. And tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your local defense contractor about our show, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.